Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the show. I appreciate you joining me today. We're going to discuss my 2024 tactical and habit changes and which ones were the most impactful. So my top 9 changes I made this year to have more output, be a better professional, and get more recognition. And I'll also give you a little bit of the before and after with all 9 of these as well. So diving right in. So I made the big shift this year to go beyond a to-do, and I started leveraging a program called TickTick. I can highly recommend it, and I kind of look at it as a second brain application. So before, I had notepads and sticky notes and notebooks and calendaring of what to do, what's next, trying to prioritize, here's my backlog, so on and so forth. And really, I also tried to use, a couple different to-do lists, such as Microsoft To Do, or, even in my career, I've used Monday.com and Asana and things like that as well. And just, they're nothing other than a task orientation. And really what I like about TickTick is it facilitates a couple different tactical changes for me this year that we're going to cover as 3 different ones, all in one in a single application. So the biggest thing that this allowed me to do was I was able to just brain dump all of my stuff in there. So it really becomes a second brain application. And what this allowed me to do and what the results were effectively, I look at anxiety and depression as really rooted in a decision-making issue, by and large, at least for me. So what I mean by that is on the anxiety side, it's usually when you have so many options and so many choices in front of you that you don't know what to do. So it's almost like a fear or overwhelming of paths in front of you. And then on the flip side, depression for me is very much like a hopelessness. It's what I don't know what to do. I don't know what the next decision is. So it's a lack of options with those kind of operating at the extremes. And TickTick resolved this for me because it allowed me to have all of my stuff in a single pane of glass, and then I can regularly review that. And I could also prioritize it effectively. And so really the results were I ended up being able to sustainably output more because I was spending less time thinking about what to do, what is next, or having the emotional roller coaster potentially of that anxiety, depression, hopelessness, too many options in front of me, that kind of dichotomy back and forth. It really allowed me to just hone in and focus, have that longer sustainable output, and was a much greater evolution in comparison to calendaring and to-do lists and kind of managing multiple panes of glass. Now, getting into the prioritization aspect. So my background is in IT. So this is actually going to feed into tip number 2 that TickTick resolved for me, or tactic number 2. So, I've come to prioritize things effectively in a scope of impact priority way. That's kind of how technology prioritization typically works. Just as an easy example, if you have a multi-site business, you maybe have 3 different facilities. If you have an entire facility down, solving that problem makes more sense than solving a single person that's down, right? Like just a scope of impact issue. But when it came to really the 3 aspects of my life that I have to manage between my day-to-day IT career, my personal self and family life, and then also my business as a career coach, it really, your scope of impact becomes very complicated. And because it's which scope matters more, what do I prioritize? And it gets a lot more difficult and a lot more stress inducing. And so I was trying to do this very organically with the different to-do lists. And even with TickTick initially, when I first set that up and kind of had my brain dumps and organized things in lists, I still was trying to prioritize very organically. I very quickly, this was maybe around April or May, switched over to using the built-in Eisenhower Matrix feature. And I have a previous video on this, but this changed my life. It allowed me to just, again, with that focus of TickTick and the sustained output, it allowed me to always put that output into the biggest rock at that time. Because I have had a variety of big projects that I've had to do, whether it be in my day job, whether it be for my business, or whether it be in my personal life. And knowing which ones are the biggest rock, again, I have to think less. I have to sit there and debate pros and cons and this and that and time and effort a lot less when as soon as I add something to TickTick, I give it the correct prioritization. And I really judge things on 2 criteria. Did it make me money? And did it move me towards my goals? Right? And so the highest priority things accomplish both of those. And then, so it's just one of those things where it made things very clear having those criteria. And then the Eisenhower Matrix was saying, hey, if both criteria are met, it's the highest. If one of these criteria are met, then it's the medium. If the lesser of the two criteria is met, then it's a low, and everything else is just back low, and we feed in accordingly. So this is something that just significantly really ramped up that loss of what do I want to do, or what is next, or again, which option do I take that's in front of me. It was just clear cut consistently, revisit the list of stuff every so often to make sure things are prioritized correctly. And that's it. And that's actually something I'm going to get to in the next video, is a little bit of the reevaluation period, because that's actually, hint, hint, for the next video, going to be one of my refinement tactics of 2025. I haven't fully nailed down that interval yet, but I'll get into that a little bit more in the next video. The other thing that TickTick facilitated for me was Pomodoro Cycles. It has a built-in Pomodoro tool. So this was tactic number 3 change for me, is I very much have a background in IT of just steamrolling, burn and churn, and just brute force forward. And with the last couple of years of my life, when I've, gotten married, had lots of travel, had a couple different family issues, had the entrepreneurship and my day job, just brute forcing everything doesn't work. And so I also lost a lot of that personal time, which then led to a level of burnout at times on and off. And so I tried a bunch of different Pomodoro intervals. I very quickly realized this was absolutely critical for me to sustain these multiple big picture items in my life. Starting with the standard 25 minutes on and 25 minutes off. For those of you that don't know what a Pomodoro cycle is, you are effectively focused working on a given task for X amount of time, and then you have X amount of break. It's usually somewhere in that, we'll say about 4-to-1 to 6-to-1 ratio of the greater number being the amount of work versus the amount of break. But the standard Pomodoro cycle that you will read about if you Google it is going to be 25 minutes on, 5 minutes off. And the key with the off is it's fully disconnected. There is no stimulus. There is no brain and mental stimulus and fatigue. So I tried out a bunch of different intervals: 25 on, 5 off, 50 on, 10 off, 30 on, 5 off, 40 on, 10 off. And finally I settled on, I believe I got this from a NASA study, if I recall. I might be mixing up productivity studies, but effectively it was 53 minutes on and 17 minutes off. And this actually settled very nicely for a couple different reasons. So one is you can accomplish quite a bit in 53 minutes of focused time. So it really allowed me to move forward. And that was one of the downfalls of some of the shorter times of the 25 and 5 or 30 and 5 or 30 and 6, is sometimes those 25 or 30 minutes, just frequently I was ending up midstream in whatever thing I was doing. Where 53 allowed me more consistently to complete the task, or at least be at a milestone to move forward into the next one. Then the other thing that was nice is I function in 16-hour days. That's just how I operate. And that 16-hour day isn't working necessarily, but it's all aspects of my life: personal growth, time with family, food, eating, dogs, everything. And having Pomodoro cycles of 70 minutes actually went very nice for a 9-cycle interval at 10.5 hours. And that left me 5.5 hours for the remaining aspects of my life. 1 hour for working out, 1 hour for taking care of my dogs and small house things, and then 3.5 hours for eating and my wife. So really it just came together very nicely, and I would only have small tweaks here and there. Maybe I needed a little bit of extra time on work that I could take away from one of those things temporarily, and it just made it very easy to shift those buckets. The second item is the 17-minute break is so good for so many healthy habits, whether it's meditation, whether it's breath work or yoga and mobility work, or even a little bit of gratitude practice. Like it's the 15-minute to 17-minute interval is so good for so many of those resting, appreciative, recharge type of activities that I've nailed this down for me thus far, 53-17. I don't think anything shorter makes sense. And I think the 17-minute break is great because it does allow me that 13 to 15 minutes that a lot of these different things are going to take, specifically like the mobility work and meditation, that are closer to that 17. But then I have another 1 or 2 minutes to refill water, go to the bathroom, whatever, and settle in. So that 53-17 is really perfect for the way that I work. Now, this wasn't facilitated by TickTick, but my fourth tactic was shifting to that 6-day work week at 16-hour days, and a little bit more specifically in the time frame of give or take a little bit on any given day, but from about 7 to 11. 7 a.m. to 11 p.m. And there was a little bit of shifting here. My wife works a very unique schedule in the hospitality industry, so we were trying to balance that as well as balance just overall life and continuously move things forward. And so it's one of those things where we wanted to be able to, at least as frequently as we can, dedicate a day, and that was consistently Sunday, sort of a Sunday fun day scenario. So you're 6 days on, 1 day off. It also is enough time to not only complete everything, but also competitively, it puts me ahead of a lot of people who do stop at that typical 5-day work week. Even if they're, and especially if they're working, a 5x9 or a 5x10. So they're getting in 50 hours a week while I'm getting in 96 hours a week of total life forward progress. And even if they count, their personal time and things like that to where, they stack on top, maybe getting to that 60 or 70, again, that 96 is just a very competitive number from that perspective. And so having that consistent full day off pretty frequently allowed me to keep my head clear. And just, it was such a phenomenal change. And the big thing that I also coupled with this, which is why I'm lumping them into one, was not just doing 6-day work weeks, but also working out 6 days a week. Because working out for me provides a multitude of benefits when it actually comes to general output. So it allows me to continue that keeping my head clear. It really provided a great segment in my days because I typically work out fairly consistently around 11 a.m. on any given day. So I have 3 to 4 hours before that of progress, so I can accomplish some milestones, plan out my day, really have ducks in a row and get some stuff done, then work out, and then it's like a nice clear cut to pick up and continue on with either the mission started, or sometimes you just kind of have that split of a day where maybe the front end of your day is a lot more creative and the back end of your day is a lot more meeting and managerial and just boring type of work or run-of-the-mill work. So it really allowed a good segmentation to either continue or switch gears, but also really, really, really helped keep my head clear. And the other thing that's nice is there's a lot of literature that just supports 6 days a week for a solid 45-minute to an hour workout, really provides great results. I've had great workout results this year. So it's just a consistent win on a daily basis that really helps motivate you and keep you going and just really round out that week. All right, so something else. So tip number or tactic tip, whatever you want to call it, number 5 this year that was big for me in 2024 was never stop learning how to learn. So the big thing that I learned this year is I have tried for years to improve my reading retention, improve my reading speed, and make it to where books really provided me a valuable learning style, because traditionally I have been one that either learns through hands-on, learns through video content, or is pretty good, honestly, learning a lot through podcasts and those types of interactions. And just very consistently, I felt like there was so much information I was missing by not having an improved reading structure. And the big tip I got was listen to the audiobook and read at the same time. Get visual and auditive centers together consistently. And this really helped with all aspects. So it definitely helped with my retention. It really helped with my speed. I actually treated it like a workout to where, I started out with the audio and reading on that standard, one speed, 1-to-1 ratio. But then, after a couple months, I sat there and I ramped it up to 1.1x speed, and then 1.2, and then 1.3, and 1.4, and 1.5, and just like slowly ramped it up as I could recognize my retention and absorption and actual reading speed increase. I kind of treated it like a workout to figure out where my threshold is, and ultimately ended up at 1.5. I've tried to go beyond that, and just it's still a little bit of a struggle for me at the moment. So when I do read and have the audiobook all at the same time, which is now effectively the only way that I read, I like that 1.5 speed. It's a good balance. And the other thing that's really nice is I can plan out this as a form of input and learning and know when maybe it makes sense to begin to apply this information or shift over to a different modality of learning, such as looking at videos or listening to podcasts or learning a new skill, because I can go, hey, this is a 12-hour audiobook. I'm listening to it on 1.5. I have this much reading time per day, so I should have this thing done in 2 weeks or whatever the timeline is. So I have an idea of when I'm consistently going to be able to finish the book, which also allows me to plan my inputs very, very well. So really the philosophy here or the tactic is just never stop learning how to learn. Be open to different modalities consistently. And small tips can make a huge difference because I feel like I now have all sources of knowledge that I can learn from due to this simple trick. And that leads into another one. So tactic number 6 here is going to be balancing input versus output of information. So you can continuously just input. And really, I think most of us get caught in this cycle of, mental masturbation, for lack of a better phrase, where you are just constantly inputting information. And so you think you're learning and you think you're gaining skills and you think you have all this knowledge, but you're never getting the chance, or even you're never giving yourself the chance, is a better way to phrase it, to actually output that information and try it in the real world and begin to form your own amalgamation of cherry picking the best ideas of everybody out there. And so when it came to reading books or listening to podcasts or whatever the modality of learning that I chose for that given lesson or that given time or that given day, I tried to pick out the key aspects for output and then do them before I went to the next input. Or I would set myself a time period of saying, okay, I'm in an input phase right now. I need to get a lot of information. One of the big things I had to learn this year, and I'm still learning, I'm not going to sit here and try to make myself out to be an expert, is the marketing side of business. So from an IT perspective, learning the marketing technologies, how to manage them, how marketing personnel and professionals use them, what the pros and cons and integrations and streamlining and all this different stuff. And then on the business side, learning the marketing side, because I ended up actually losing 70% of my customer base due to some issues with Google business profiles, and actually still ended up with only a loss of a 30% revenue from the best year that my coaching company has had, and even year over year. So this has literally happened earlier this year that I lost that business. 70% of my customer base, I had a 0% change in revenue. So while most years a 0% change in revenue isn't great, to lose 70% of my customer base and still end up with that, or 70% of my lead gen and still end up with a no revenue change, I consider that a win. And so I had to balance, okay, I'm going to learn marketing from a couple different aspects. I'm going to choose this thing, this video, this book, take a couple different inputs, take out the ideas I think I like, and then put them into action and see what worked. And so it would be almost a phased approach as opposed to one-to-one input, output. It was, let me take in a bunch and then let me output the holistic picture. And then from there, you evaluate and go, maybe you have some organic changes or organic growth where you realize, hey, I should have done A, B, and C better. Or now when you go back to the input phase, you're targeting what you see could be better in your output. So now you have a more educated input to begin with. And so really minimizing that time to output from the input stage, and then making sure you're going back and forth and applying what you're actually learning. Otherwise, you learn nothing. Learning is all actions. So balancing input and output information, crucial for my 2024 year, and I love it. Tip number 7 is going to be AI is the best study buddy. That's the way I'm going to phrase this. And whether you are trying to learn any skill or any book, let's say for me, again, I just got into that audiobook and reading sort of scenario. So I could sit there and I read, 48 Laws of Power this year. And then there were a couple aspects that maybe I didn't understand, and, maybe wanted some clarification on or to discuss. Or ironically, one of the things about 48 Laws of Power is Robert Greene, the author, states very early in the book, in the introduction or preface or whatever it's called, that these are 48 laws of power. Some of them are malicious and some of them are not. And it's up to you to decide how to do that. And I couldn't quite tell sometimes which ones were which from the text of the book. So I could then go to AI and say, hey, I need you to be an expert in understanding the text of 48 laws of power. Can we talk about this particular law or this particular application? And I can have a conversation with it back and forth. So good. Such a good study buddy, because sometimes you don't, it's very on demand. It's in real time. You can sit there while it's fresh and warm in your mind. It can also help that reinforcement and retention of the knowledge you just gained. You can have mock conversations with it. This is a huge growth area for me in 2024, is having difficult conversations with personnel now that I'm in leadership on a more critical basis and are higher up on the leadership totem pole. And so being able to have those difficult conversations up, down, and lateral of the ladder, I could do a lot of mock conversations. Hey, here's what I know about this person on the receiving end. I need you to emulate this person in AI. And here's the conversation we need to have. Here's the intent. Here's the output. and I'd like to have the conversation and then give me feedback at the end. And you could sit there and then just have a voice conversation with AI and perform that mock conversation. You could have it build practice exercises, lab environments, and test situations for new skills you're trying to develop, whether that's in Excel or project management, or in my case, IT and different technologies. It's such a good study buddy, and is arguably the best out there. And I think that's going to be one of the next big, huge use cases of AI is going to be in the education system. So go ahead and get ahead of it. Leverage it to make yourself better. Tactic number 8, time study yourself when you feel like there isn't enough time. So time studies were something that were completely new to me, really coming into the end of 2023. The end of 2023 is when I first learned about the concept of a time study. I did not use them in 2023. However, I did very early on in 2024. I just felt like there wasn't enough time. There wasn't enough either output or something was lacking somewhere, and I couldn't figure out what it was. And when I ran that time study, so the way I did it was I used a Excel spreadsheet where for an entire week, I wrote down a summary of what I did every 15 minutes. Now, did this consume time? Did that mean that that week's productivity was worse than it otherwise would have been? Absolutely. There's definitely a cost to doing it. But the benefit on the other side was you realize, oh my gosh, I'm spending 2 hours in responding to emails every day. Oh my gosh, I had 6 hours of meetings in a day for 3 days in a row. No wonder I didn't get stuff done. Or in my case, sometimes even if you go on the personal side, hey, you know what? I actually played a little bit too much video games this week for relaxation. Or I spent a little bit too much time seeking out information and watching YouTube videos for quote unquote input where I should have been focusing on output. For some other common things and common people, right? You might have too much time on your phone or too much social media or whatever it was. And this is just great to identify because by breaking it down to 15-minute blocks for your entire working or productive day, you see where you're spending time that you shouldn't be. And it's just impossible to ignore at that point. So when you are getting to that point of feeling like, man, I am overwhelmed, I'm maxed out, I can't do more, or there's not enough time study yourself. Do it for a week, see how stuff goes. And here's the thing, you will either validate your concerns and come out and go, woof, okay, so now I just have a prioritization issue, right? Like I genuinely am maxed out. I have a prioritization problem. Or you will be able to identify and go, oh, I shouldn't be spending that much time on that. Or I shouldn't be spending that much time. Why is, why are emails taking up so much time of my day? So it just provides a lot of clarity in either direction, either confirming your judgment or telling you, hey, here's where you're actually lacking. And then tactic number 9 was specificity of positives and negatives in your life. So whether on the positive side, it's your goals or it's your wins, and on the negative side, it's your losses and your fears or your hesitations. And this one really came to light for me when starting to do content. I had not done YouTube before this year. I had done LinkedIn posts and I had done some blogs in 2023, but I knew that I needed 2024 to be my content year. And I'll be honest, it is scary. At least for me, it was, again, I have a lot of data to support that the information that I am providing to people and the coaching I'm providing to my clients is successful. I have the results to prove it, but it's one thing to go from one-to-one interactions all the way out to one-to-many and in a format that you're not used to. And so I was just genuinely scared. And when I got specific about the fact that I was scared of the comment section and that people were going to critique and that people were going to judge and that my content was going to suck and it was going to be low quality and this and that. Like when I really wrote down what it was and then said, are these beliefs or are these fears going to be what prevents me from my success in that long run? And the answer was no. I just needed to overcome it. You cannot get good at something without first sucking. And so the fact that that's what everything of my fear was based around, just that it was going to be bad. And at the end of the day, the feedback is welcomed. That's the other irony of it, is I want the feedback from you guys, from myself, from anybody working with me on my content to make it better. Because the whole point of this is to just go beyond that one-to-one and get to one-to-many and make an impact in people's lives. And I'm not going to do that if I'm just perpetually scared and nervous. So that was a huge one for me. And then on the wins side, right? It's sometimes it's very hard to be grateful for what you've done and really what you did. And so when I looked at the fact that when I ran those numbers that I mentioned earlier, I lost 70% of my lead gen and had a 0% chance or 0% change in year-over-year revenue, and also only a 30% loss from the best year that this company has done. That's a win. That's huge, especially as someone who is a new entrepreneur and a new marketer and a new sales guy, is new in all of these aspects. To have that level, I'm proud of that. I still need to now grow and bring it back. But man, that was huge for me. Or again, in the goals and aspirations, it can't just be that, I wanted, 100 subscribers to my LinkedIn blog. Blew that out of the water very quick. That was my actual first goal when I published my first blog article there, was let me get to 100 subscribers this year. Blew it out of the water, not in terms of 10, 15x. I think I'm at 270, 275, something like that. That was awesome. That was incredible. So having actual concrete goals and metrics, and then when you don't meet them, figuring out, was that too aggressive? Was it not? Was my quality bad? Was it not? I didn't set any YouTube goals. I'm going to take this data and set that into my 2025. But just being specific about the positives and negative in your life, really drilling down and not just saying, I'm scared of content. But what are you scared of? Oh, I'm scared of the comments. I'm scared of the criticism. I'm scared that people aren't going to like it. I'm scared that people are going to judge me. I'm scared of it. Oh, okay. Now, is that worth it? Is that what's going to be what prevents your success? So summing back up here really, really quick, 2024 tactics that I am 100% carrying into 2025 because they were game changing for me, was using TickTick as a second brain application, leveraging my Eisenhower Matrix for prioritization, Pomodoro Cycles of 53 minutes on, 17 minutes off, working and working out 6 days a week, never stop learning how to learn. Specifically for this year, for me, it was audiobook plus book equals reading success. Balancing input and output of information. AI is the best study buddy. Time study yourself when you feel like there isn't enough time, and specificity of the positives and negatives in your life. Let me know in the comments below what you did in 2024, that tactical changes that you made that made a difference, that you want to share with everybody. If you like this video, you want to see more of this content, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, hit the notification bell. And until next time, everybody, thank you.